Perhaps each of us has at least once felt a vague unease when near someone, no loud arguments, no obvious signs of aggression, and yet their very presence leaves us drained, confused, or adrift. Evil sadly does not only live in distant tales, it exists quietly all around us, and to protect ourselves, we don't need to become extreme cynics, but we do need a certain kind of awakening. Eyes wide open and a heart that sees clearly. This journey begins by learning to recognize the unmistakable signs, the silent warnings that once seen cannot be unseen. 1. Continuous manipulation. Perhaps each of us has at least once felt a vague unease when near someone, no loud arguments, no clear signs of aggression, and yet their very presence leaves us drained, confused, or adrift. This isn't just a personal feeling. There truly are people who bring a deeply negative influence to the spaces they enter. In reality, evil doesn't only exist in fairy tales or films. It lives quietly, often disguised under perfectly ordinary, even charming appearances. But with a little awareness and understanding, we can learn to recognize the warning signs and protect ourselves. One of the most common tactics such individuals used is continuous manipulation. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once warned, "He who has many fears has many means of manipulation." The malicious rarely rely on honesty or directness. They manipulate reality, distort the truth, and slowly erode your confidence in yourself. At first, they may appear as a friend, a devoted colleague offering gentle compliments that build trust. But beneath those kind words are subtle narratives that belittle you, magnify your small mistakes into major flaws, or sow seeds of doubt into what you once believed with certainty. The danger lies not just in their words, but in the subtle impact they have on your mind. One day you find yourself doubting your own abilities, leaning on their guidance just to feel worthy. It's like being drawn into an invisible web where each decision, each step you take becomes more entangled with their influence. Stoic philosophy through the teachings of Epictetus reminds us, no one is free who is not master of themselves. A truly kind person will always encourage your independence, helping you stand firmly on your own. In contrast, if someone consistently makes you feel dependent on them, disregards your personal boundaries, that is a clear sign you needed to step back and re-examine the relationship. The key here is clarity and self-awareness. To escape the game of manipulation, you don't need to argue or prove yourself right. Doing so only pulls you deeper into the performance they've orchestrated. Instead, take a step back, anchor yourself, and refuse to engage in interactions that erode your inner freedom. I once had a vivid experience with this. A former colleague was remarkably skilled at praising me publicly while quietly feeding subtle criticisms about my abilities to our superiors. When I confronted him, his calm, seemingly caring demeanor only deepened my confusion. It took a long time for me to realize that all his guidance and advice were designed not to uplift me, but to make me doubt myself, to tether me to his support, and to forget my true worth. If you find yourself in a similar situation, remember this. The manipulative cannot control you if you remain awake. You don't need to prove your worth or argue to be seen. You simply need to maintain your boundaries, refusing to let them trespass into the sacred space of your mind. And above all, never forget, a healthy relationship always nurtures your freedom, never imprisons it. 2. False charm. There are people who, upon first meeting, radiate an unusual kind of magnetism. A perfect smile, warm words, a seemingly sincere attention, all making you feel as though you have just found a kindred spirit, an ideal companion. But behind that charming mask, there are sometimes intentions far less pure. The philosopher Epictetus once warned, "No matter how dazzling the surface darkness it may still dwell within, charm when used sincerely is a bridge that connects hearts. But in the hands of those with darker intentions, it becomes a deadly weapon." The danger isn't charm itself, it's the way charm is used to blind you. The malicious understand that to manipulate you, they must first win your trust. They present themselves as the steadfast friend during your darkest hours, the tireless colleague who always supports you, even the inspiring mentor you look up to. But it's all an elaborate performance. And when you open your heart, when you start to lean on them emotionally or seek their direction, that's when their true intentions slowly begin to show. I learned this the hard way. There was once a friend of mine who was exceptionally skillful. He was always the first to show up when I needed help, always offering timely encouragement. But over time, I began to notice something unsettling. His advice often steered me away from my core values. When I succeeded, rather than celebrating with pure joy, he would cloak subtle warnings under a veil of concern, telling me I needed to be more cautious, that I was not stable enough to celebrate. Each time my confidence was chipped away, and without realizing it, I grew increasingly dependent on his approval. That is the essence of false charm. It is not meant to build you up, but to control you. It does not aim to help you grow, but to keep you within reach. And perhaps the most dangerous part is that the sweetness of it all makes you doubt your own instincts, blinding you to the red flags you would have otherwise seen. Stoic philosophy teaches that genuine kindness needs no grand display. A truly good person wears no mask. Their actions, however modest, are marked by consistency and sincerity. You can recognize them not just by their polished words, but by how they treat those from whom they have nothing to gain, the powerless, the unseen. If you feel a faint unease within you, a small voice whispering warnings when you are near someone, do not ignore it. Intuition, though wordless, often sees the truth before reason has time to analyze. Observe carefully. Do their actions match their words? Do they treat everyone with respect, or only those who can offer them something? True charm brings a sense of security and strength. False charm, no matter how dazzling, ultimately leaves behind emptiness and doubt. To protect yourself, you don't need to become cold or suspicious of everyone. You simply need to stay awake, to observe, to listen, and above all, to never lose yourself chasing after surface brilliance. A good person will always encourage you to be more of who you are. A malicious one will subtly push you to become the easiest version of yourself to control. In a world filled with elaborate masks, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the ability to recognize true kindness and the courage to walk away when deception reveals its face. 3. Lying without a conscience. No relationship can endure without truth. But for those with malicious hearts, truth is not a value to be honored. It is an obstacle to overcome in pursuit of their goals. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, nothing should be done if it is not right, and nothing should be said if it is not true. Yet for the deceitful, lying is not just an occasional tool. It becomes second nature. The most frightening part is that these lies are not always blatant. They are often woven skillfully with clear intent, layered in half-truths that make it difficult for you to tell the difference. A friend I once knew was a perfect example. She would often boast about her impressive achievements, sharing stories crafted to inspire admiration. But when I happened to check a few details, emails, internal documents, the truth was far removed from her tales. When confronted with evidence, instead of admitting fault, She quickly shifted the narrative, blaming misunderstandings, wrapping the situation in confusion. This is how the deceitful use lies as a subtle weapon, not just to hide the truth, but to shake your confidence in your own perception. They make you wonder, am I judging too harshly? Am I remembering things incorrectly? Maybe I just don't understand the full story. And piece by piece, if you are not careful, they begin to control your reality. One of the most common tactics they use is perception manipulation, making you doubt even events you know you experienced. This is no longer the harmless lie to keep the peace. It is a deliberate reshaping of reality to serve their personal gain. In Stoic philosophy, actions are seen as the clearest reflection of character. A sincere person aligns their actions with their words. A deceitful one will always show a disconnect between what they promise and what they do. So how do you recognize such people? Pay attention to consistency. When someone's stories change depending on the audience, when their words and actions do not align, that is a red flag you should not ignore. The deceitful must constantly maintain increasingly complex layers of lies, and it is that complexity that becomes their critical weakness. Because truth, as Marcus Aurelius pointed out, stands firm. It requires no excuses, no elaborate defenses. However, facing deception does not mean you must engage in heated battles or set out to expose them. The wiser path is to maintain your inner clarity. If you discover someone is lying, acknowledge it as an important data point, but do not let anger take hold of you. Step back, set your boundaries, and if needed, walk away from that relationship. Remember, honesty is the foundation of self-respect. When you stand firmly with the truth, you not only shield yourself from the malicious, you nourish your courage and inner freedom. Lies may offer the deceitful short-term advantages, but over time it is they who are destroyed by them, while the truth endures quietly, steadfastly. In a world where words are sometimes twisted to distort reality, choose to be the one who sees things as they are, without fanfare, without loud debates, simply walking steadily along the clear path of your own making. Truth does not need a defender, it only needs to be seen. For lack of empathy, there is one element that makes human relationships warm and meaningful. Empathy allows us to step beyond the boundaries of our own egos, to feel the pain, the joy, the struggles of others as if they were our own. Seneca once emphasized, man is by nature a social being, not born to live alone. Yet in malicious hearts, empathy is almost non-existent. They do not see others as individuals worthy of respect, but merely as tools for their own purposes. Sadly, those who lack empathy are often very skilled at hiding their emptiness. They can play the part of the listener, the sharer, the comforter. But then in the moments that truly matter, when you most need someone to understand, the mask falls. You realize that your pain was merely a stage for them to speak about themselves, that your story was merely a prompt for them to boast about their own suffering, or worse, to dismiss your feelings entirely. I once experienced this when confiding in an old friend about a profound loss. Before I could even pour out my heart, she had already shifted the conversation to her own personal troubles, as if my grief was just an opening act for the real story, hers. At first, I thought I was being too sensitive. But after many such encounters, I understood. The lack of empathy was not a momentary lapse. It was a pattern. It was a truth. And that coldness, if we are not careful, can slowly erode the soul. When you are with someone who cannot empathize, you begin to feel smaller, lonelier even in their presence. Your sadness is not shared, it is diminished or used. Your joy is not multiplied, it is belittled, envied, or quietly ignored. Stoic philosophy advises, Instead of debating what it means to be a good person, simply become one. And a truly good person is known by their empathy, not through grand declarations, but through their quiet presence when you need it most. A true friend doesn't need to have the perfect words for your pain. They simply need to sit with you, to bear witness to your loss, without needing to say much at all. So how can you recognize a lack of empathy before it's too late? Pay attention. When you open your heart, do they truly listen or quickly turn the story back to themselves? When you succeed, are they genuinely happy for you, or do they subtly downplay your achievement? When you fail, do they stay by your side or use your struggle as a reason to criticize or distance themselves? These signs, though small, paint a more honest picture than any flowery words ever could. And above all, do not let someone else's lack of empathy make you lose faith in kindness itself. Not everyone is indifferent. This world still holds many hearts that know how to listen, how to lift you up, how to laugh and cry with you. Not for gain, but simply out of human connection. If you have ever felt heartbroken by someone's coldness when you needed warmth the most, remember that pain does not diminish your worth. It merely reflects the limits of their soul. Choose to be with those who connect with you through the heart, not those who exploit your vulnerability for their own ends. On this journey, setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-respect, a silent declaration that says, I am worthy of love, of understanding, and I will accept nothing less. 5. The craving for control. In every toxic relationship, whether subtle or overt, there lies a common thread, the craving for control. Not just control over your actions, but an invasion into the deepest parts of you, your emotions, your thoughts, your very sense of self-worth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Your mind is yours, do not let outside events seize it." Those with malicious intent know this well. They understand that if they can conquer your mind, they will conquer your life. Control rarely begins with blatant commands. Instead, it often arrives in the form of sincere advice, of special concern, of suggestions made for your own good. At first, they seem like the wise friend, always offering timely counsel, helping you see what you cannot see. But over time, you realize that these pieces of advice aren't merely opinions. They carry an unspoken order. Each time you act differently, you are met with disappointment, with subtle suggestions that you are sabotaging yourself, that you will fail if you don't listen. I once found myself in such a relationship. This person constantly encouraged me to be more cautious, not to rush. Let me help you think it through. At first it sounded thoughtful, but as time passed, those words became invisible chains. I began to doubt decisions I had once made with confidence. I hesitated at crucial opportunities. I turned away from challenges out of fear of making a mistake. And every minor failure deepened my belief that I needed this person to keep me from falling. That is the deepest form of control, when you no longer trust yourself. When your mind, little by little, is no longer your own, but shaped by voices from outside rather than the one within. Someone who truly cares about you will always offer you freedom, not dependency. They will respect your choices. Even when they disagree, they will encourage you to listen to yourself, not make you feel small or foolish for walking a different path. They understand that true growth can only bloom from the freedom to choose and the lessons learned from personal victories and defeats alike. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that freedom does not come from controlling the outer world, but from mastering your inner world. No one, be it a friend, a lover, or a wise teacher, has the right to steal your autonomy. They may guide, they may warn, but the decision must always remain yours. So how do you recognize someone who controls under the mask of friendliness? Ask yourself, when you share your desires, do they support you or immediately sow doubt? When you make mistakes, do they let you rise on your own or use your failure to tighten their grip? When you succeed, do they genuinely celebrate you or find a way to remind you that you owe it to them? If the answers make you feel smaller rather than larger, it's time to set some boundaries. Remember, true growth doesn't come from dependence. It comes from inner encouragement. Someone who truly loves you will never want you to shrink just to fit their need for control. They will want you to grow, even if it means you may one day soar beyond their reach. If you find yourself in a relationship where you must seek permission just to be yourself, pause. Reflect. No one was born to live as a replica or a puppet for someone else. You have the right to choose. The right to make mistakes, and most of all, the right to live a life that belongs to you. As Marcus Aurelius once said, the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. And no one but you has the right to decide the course of your mind. 6. The blame game and avoidance of responsibility. One of the most subtle tactics used by the malicious is the blame game and the artful evasion of responsibility. Seneca once observed, "People are more inclined to believe than to judge." And it is this natural tendency to trust that manipulators ruthlessly exploit. Instead of owning their mistakes, they carefully craft narratives where they are always the victim and someone else is always at fault. At first, their blame shifting may seem entirely reasonable. Their excuses are often wrapped in logic and context. I only reacted that way because they hurt me first. Or if it weren't for the bad circumstances, I would have acted differently. Gradually, if you are not careful, you get swept into their web of justifications until you can no longer tell where truth ends and manipulation begins. I still remember a collaborative project I once undertook with a friend. When things began to unravel, instead of working together to find solutions, she quickly turned to criticize the parts I was responsible for. Softly, with a constructive tone, she suggested that perhaps I lacked experience or that I had overlooked certain factors. At first, it made sense. I blamed myself. I worked harder to fix everything, but over time I saw the pattern. Whenever a problem arose, she was quick to shift the blame onto others, never once owning her part. That is how those who evade responsibility wound you, not with violence but with subtle blame. They burden you with the weight of their mistakes, turning guilt into invisible chains that bind you into the role of the one who must bear it all. If you are not firm, you start to believe you are truly incompetent, truly at fault, and from there you not only endure their blame, you begin to punish yourself exactly as they intended. Stoic philosophy teaches truth requires no elaborate defense. When someone acts rightly, they need no long excuses, no complicated justifications. They have the courage to admit fault, to learn to grow. Thus, when you encounter those who always shift blame, you must maintain a clear and steady distance. Do not let emotions, especially guilt, cloud your judgment of reality. Observe carefully. When conflicts arise, do they acknowledge their own faults or immediately focus on others? When you offer feedback, do they listen humbly or react defensively, even aggressively? When failure happens, do they take responsibility or spin endless excuses, blaming circumstances? If someone constantly evades responsibility, it's not just a flaw in behavior. It's a crack in their character. No matter how talented they may be, Such a person cannot be a healthy partner, friend, or lover to protect yourself. Learn to clearly distinguish between your mistakes and those of others. Take responsibility for your own actions, but refuse to shoulder what is not yours. And above all, remember, you do not need to bear the weight of others' mistakes to prove your kindness. True kindness is not silent suffering. It is standing firmly for truth, even if that means walking away from those who do not deserve you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Inner peace comes from living in harmony with your true nature. Let truth, not blame, guide your life." 7. Taking pleasure in the pain of others. Among the many signs that reveal a malicious heart, there is one colder, more chilling than the rest. They find pleasure in the pain of others. This isn't always obvious. At first, it may appear as harmless, teasing, a smirk when someone stumbles, or subtle cutting remarks when someone is hurting. But if you watch closely, you will see, for these people, every failure, every wound of another feels like a sweet gift, feeding their distorted sense of self-worth. Epictetus once advised, "Stay close to those who make you better, but those who find joy in others' sufferings do the opposite. They feel powerful not by building themselves up, but by dragging others down." I remember once a former colleague, always outwardly friendly, smiled strangely upon hearing that a team member had failed at a crucial project. Instead of showing empathy, she quickly spread the story, adding little embellishments, mocking subtly. At that moment, I felt a vague discomfort, but it wasn't until much later that I understood her joy was built upon someone else's collapse. People like this don't need real victories. They only need to witness others' defeat to feel superior. They don't build castles for themselves. They destroy the castles of others just to feel taller. And sadly, in a society that often glorifies shallow success, such behavior is easily disguised as brutal honesty, realism, or dark humor. Stoic philosophy reminds us, true joy is never built upon the suffering of others. A kind soul, even in competition, never roots for another's failure. A pure heart does not need anyone else to fall in order to feel its own worth. So when you meet someone who seems to delight in the downfall of others, be cautious, because today the victim might be someone else. But tomorrow, when you stumble or falter, you may become the next gift that feeds their twisted satisfaction. To protect yourself, you must observe not just what people say to you, but what they say about others. Where when someone falls, do they quietly offer a hand or eagerly laugh? When someone succeeds, do they genuinely celebrate or seek to tarnish or minimize the achievement? When you show vulnerability, do they comfort you or exploit it to strike you down? If the answers weigh heavily on your heart, then you already know this is not someone you should keep close. Those who enjoy others' pain reveal a deep emptiness within themselves, an old wound they have never healed. They seek not lasting happiness through growth, but fleeting relief by pulling others down to the level of their own brokenness. Therefore, be strong in your choices. Stay close only to those who lift you up, who encourage you to become a better version of yourself. Build a circle, small perhaps, but filled with kindness, compassion, and genuine joy. And if necessary, have the courage to walk away from places where pain is treated as entertainment. Marcus Aurelius once urged, "Stand like a firm cliff against which the waves break in vain." Be that person, steady, calm, and never seeking pleasure in the shadows cast by another's suffering. 8. Subtle isolation. In the journey of manipulation, one of the strongest weapons the malicious wield is isolation. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us, Human beings are made to cooperate like 2 feet walking together. But those with toxic hearts understand that when you are severed from sources of love and support, you become vulnerable and easier to control. Thus, they use isolation like an invisible cord, slowly tightening around you before you even realize it. This isolation never happens overnight. At first, it disguises itself as concern. I don't think your friends really understand you, or your family is always too controlling. It sounds as though they are on your side, but in truth, they are quietly driving wedges into your most important relationships. I remember years ago, I had a friend who always seemed concerned for me. She would gently drop comments like, "I feel like they're always using you," or "You deserve better friends." At first, I appreciated her sensitivity, but over time, I began to doubt those who had stood by me for so long. I withdrew, I shared less, until eventually she became the only person I trusted. It was in that moment that I realized I had been cut off from the web of love that once nourished my soul, and the one who remained was also the one tightening the noose. Isolation doesn't just rob you of external support. It unsettles your inner balance without the voices of others. When the only echo you hear belongs to one person, you begin to doubt your intuition, your memories, even your smallest dreams. Stoic philosophy teaches that real strength doesn't come from isolation. It comes from right connection. We grow, we heal through sincere relationships. Those who truly love you will never seek to separate you from those who also love you. They will want you to have more arms around you, not fewer. If you find yourself feeling lonely even with someone by your side, ask yourself, does this person make you feel that every other relationship in your life is flawed except for theirs? Do they plant seeds of doubt about your family, your friends, the ones who once cheered you on? When you want to share joy with others, do they make you feel guilty as if you are betraying them? If the answer is yes, then you must see, this is not true friendship nor true love. It is a calculated strategy of control. In nature, the strongest trees are not the solitary ones, standing alone in an empty field. They are the trees of the forest, their roots intertwined, sharing nutrients, weathering storms together. Humans are the same. We do not thrive in isolation. We are nourished, strengthened by authentic connection. If you realize you have been cut off from those who once loved you, find your way back bravely. Or reach out again to family, to old friends. Listen to the voices that once lifted you higher, not only the whispers that hold you down. And most importantly, trust in your own worth, even when someone tries to make you forget it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "What does not harmonize with your soul cannot hold your heart for long." So choose relationships that nourish your soul, not the chains that strangle your heart. Disguised envy. Among all the quiet yet dangerous emotions, disguised envy is perhaps one of the hardest to detect. Seneca once said envy is a silent disease, like a sore that eats away at the soul. Indeed, envy does not always show itself openly. It often hides behind the masks of concern, heartfelt advice, or even half-hearted compliments that leave you feeling both happy and strangely uneasy. Those who harbor envy do not always openly tear you down. They are more subtle than that. They may applaud your success and then casually add, "That's great, but if only you had pushed a little further, it would have been perfect." Or remind you that somewhere someone else has gone further, achieved more, as if to suggest that your accomplishment is just a grain of sand in a vast desert. I once had a friend like that. Every time I made a meaningful step forward in my career, she would appear with a smile and seemingly sincere congratulations. But almost immediately afterward would come the familiar comments, "Don't get too excited. There's still so much you haven't done." Or, "I know someone who's achieved even more." At first, I thought she was merely keeping me grounded. But over time, I realized these were not words born from love. They were tiny needles puncturing my self-esteem. Disguised envy is insidious because it doesn't attack directly. It plants a vague doubt inside you. The unsettling feeling that you are not enough, that you must constantly strive, not for yourself, but for some invisible standard set by others. And if you are not careful, you get trapped in a cycle, never feeling good enough, never truly savoring the success you've rightfully earned. Stoic philosophy teaches us that true contentment comes from living in alignment with your own values, not from comparison with others. A true friend, a great soul, celebrates your success as if it were their own. They do not sow seeds of doubt. They water your joy with genuine encouragement and pride. So how can you recognize disguised envy? When you share your joy, do they truly celebrate with you or offer a fleeting compliment followed by a list of what you lack? When you achieve success, do they lift you higher or make you wonder if you are truly deserving? When you advance, do they support your growth or quietly create comparisons that make you hesitate? If those questions stir a heaviness in your heart, trust that feeling. Remember, you do not need to dim your light to make others more comfortable. You were born to shine, not to live forever seeking permission to be yourself. Disguised envy is a reflection of deep insecurity within the other person. It says nothing about your true worth. People like that do not define the path you should walk. They only reveal the limits they have placed on themselves. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not let your happiness depend on the words or approval of others. Choose your own joy. Celebrate yourself for every step forward, big or small, and surround yourself with those who truly rejoice with you. Without calculation, without hidden comparisons, without resentment. In this vast world, true success is not about outshining others. It is about shining together, each in our own unique way." 10. A heart that knows no remorse. There is one unmistakable sign when you are facing someone truly toxic. They carry a heart that knows no remorse. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't waste time debating what a good person should be, just be one." But those who carry darkness in their hearts are the opposite. They never truly reflect, never admit fault, never seek to make things right. To them, acknowledging mistakes is a sign of weakness. And so they choose to live in self-satisfaction and denial. The absence of remorse is not just a habit, it is a way of life. Those with unrepentant hearts will always find ways to justify the harm they cause. They blame circumstances, they blame others, they blame the oversensitivity of their victims, but they never turn inward. I once knew someone like that. Whenever anyone told her that she had hurt them, she would immediately lash back, "I've endured far worse." Or, if they weren't so weak, they wouldn't be hurt by such harmless words. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she pause to listen to someone else's pain. In her world, blame always belonged elsewhere, and she was forever the misunderstood victim. That is the crux of it. Those without remorse never truly grow. They live in a vicious cycle, painting themselves as flawless and blaming the harshness of the world for their shortcomings. They miss the chance to change, to connect, to become better versions of themselves. Stoic philosophy reminds us, Inner growth begins with the courage to face our own imperfections. A genuine human being is not afraid to say, "I was wrong," because in that moment of humility, the door to freedom and true growth swings wide open. If you are in a relationship where whenever conflict arises, the other person always justifies, always blames, always attacks instead of listening, reflecting, and improving, understand this: true change will never come. There will be no honest dialogue, no real repair, no healthy future to build upon. You must bravely accept. Not everyone is willing to grow with you. Not everyone possesses the humility to admit fault or the courage to change. You are not responsible for fixing the hearts of those who refuse to heal themselves. You are not obligated to sacrifice your self-respect or peace for someone who makes no effort to meet you halfway. Marcus Aurelius reminds us the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. So choose to step away from relationships that cloud your mind. Choose to stay close to those who apologize when needed, who listen when you are hurting, and who strive to build something better with you after every stumble. Ending a toxic relationship is not a failure. It is one of the bravest acts you can do for yourself. It is how you tell yourself, "I am worthy of kindness, of genuine love, and of connections that nourish my soul." And when you turn your back on hearts that know no remorse, you open the path to meet souls willing to grow alongside you in honesty, in light, and in endless evolution. You do not need to apologize for demanding authenticity. You do not need to feel regret for protecting your peace. You need only to walk forward, steady and unwavering, toward a life where your inner light is no longer dimmed by anyone. When we learn to recognize the hidden shadows within relationships, we are not merely protecting ourselves from pain. We are taking a profound step forward on the journey of inner growth. Because the truth is, this world will always hold both light and darkness side by side. We cannot change the nature of the world, but we can change how we walk through it. We can choose clarity over naivete, awareness over blindness. We can choose to build a life not shaped by fear or manipulation, but by self-respect, kindness, and the genuine light that shines from within. There will be moments when you doubt yourself. There will be times when you wonder if you are being too harsh, too distant. But remember this: loving yourself is never selfish. Setting boundaries is a noble act. It is how you tell the world, "I honor my soul. I will not allow the darkness of others to extinguish the light within me." You do not need to carry anger or resentment when you walk away from toxic relationships. You need only to carry the lesson, carry the gratitude for they taught you something precious about the value of true kindness, and carry the commitment that you will never again lose yourself. Not for anyone. Walk forward, steady, silent, and proud. Remember, you are worthy of relationships that nourish your soul, that make you believe in the beauty of sincerity, that awaken the best within you. In a world where darkness is always lurking, your inner light is your greatest act of defiance. And as long as you hold that light steady, no one and nothing can ever extinguish you.